welcome to today's episode of Confessions of a Cleaning Business Owner. And today we're going to be discussing the really delicate balance of trying to run a business with a family, in particular kids, and then we might go on to what it's like working with your partner. So, Diane, you definitely started your business for your kids, didn't you?
So, one of my sort of main drivers was my son was already older and had already left home, but my daughter was about 13. And it was very much like, I am missing out on the last bit. Okay, so I've been around for them when they were younger, but I was just like, I'm missing out. And I would get home from work at like 7 o'clock at night, and Mark was brilliant. Him and Emma would be, would have had tea, and they'd have had a really good time together, and I was missing it. And one of the reasons for starting the business was because I knew it was something I could do from home. But obviously, as everybody listening knows who's got their own business, sometimes the business takes over and you end up having an even worse work-life balance than actually working for somebody else. But I found a balance quite early on because I was so focused on not missing that last few years with my daughter at home.
Yeah, I think it's really, really tough, isn't it? I had it slightly different to you. So I actually started when I was pregnant. And so I was pregnant with the first one. So I had 3 years with the first one and then went on to have the second baby. So worked through both pregnancies as well, running a cleaning business. Obviously, you were like desperate to spend time with them. I was desperate to get away, Diane. I was like, send them to nursery. Like, I loved my kids, but I loved working 2 or 3 days a week and those shorter hours. And that's always been my dream, to work, within the school hours, because it is about the kids.
Yeah, and that is one thing about that this industry delivers, isn't it? Is that you can work school hours. Now, doesn't mean you can only work school hours. There are times when you have to work outside those hours, especially when you're doing admin and sales appointments and all that sort of stuff. But the actual cleaning bit can be done in school hours, can't it?
Yeah, but I've got it so wrong over the years. So wrong. And I remember, like I've talked about it before, when I was a Big Brother fan when it was on, and I got tickets to the final, and I just couldn't go because I would have had to set off at 1 o'clock, and I'd had staff go off sick or whatever, and I had to clean till 4. There was no way. And I've sacrificed, that's a big thing, but the number of things I must have sacrificed over the years, time where I probably should have seen a school play or should have done this or should have done that. And yeah, I've watched 80% of them, but I haven't watched 100% because I just couldn't, because sometimes I've put the business first and you do feel guilty.
Yeah, and I suppose, as the business owner, we're the ones that usually make the biggest sacrifices. And for me, it's always been, it can only be a short-term sacrifice. But when you've got a job, those nativity plays and those sports days, you can book the time off. But when you're a business owner, you think you've got the time booked off, and sometimes it goes a bit awry. But I did try really hard, but it was because I was very conscious that, like I said, my son had already left home and my daughter was 13. I knew that she, in 5 years' time, she did go to uni. She was potentially going to uni at that stage. And it was like, I did not want to miss it. And, one of the things that I used to do was I would literally, when she got home from school, and we call Emma Jibber Jabber, okay? We still call her Jibber Jabber because she talks a lot. I don't know where she gets it from, talking on a podcast, but she would come home and she would literally tell me everything about people and everything that had gone on at school that day. Some of the people I never even heard of, but she would just talk, and it was lovely. Sometimes wanted her to sort of stop briefly, but she would do that. But I knew that if I was there, she would be able to do that with me, and we could have that time together. And even if it meant that after she was then either popping out with friends, or she was doing her homework or watching TV, I could then go back to work for a couple of hours in the evening, feeling guilt-free because I'd had those 2 or 3 hours with her. And we have a fantastic relationship now. She's actually just turned 30. And, we have a fantastic relationship now. And I'm not saying it's all down to me making that effort at that age, but it definitely didn't, it couldn't have hurt, could it, to make sure I was there for those really important teenage years, that she had somebody there for her to talk to sound ideas off. Mark was the one that if she'd had a fallout with a boyfriend or something, he'd go and buy a strawberry milkshake. But I was there on the day to day. So yeah, it's good. And for me, I know now I have that amazing relationship with her.
Yeah, and So I'm going through this now. My daughter's 11 and about to move up to secondary school. And we've started walking home from school, right? And it's a 2.5 mile walk back from school. So I have to walk there and she walks back with me. She talks constantly, Diane.
Does she talk really fast? Does she talk really fast?
Well, I don't know because I talk fast, so no one's going to talk fast. No, I don't know, probably. But she talks, and it's like, well, the teacher did this, and I think she was wrong, and this friend said this to this one. I'm like, oh my Lord, I don't care. Like, I don't care. And I think, it is great to be able to do all of that, isn't it? Like, and then she gets home and she's exhausted from the walk and from the emotional download, and she's quite happy to go off in her room for an hour.
Yeah.
And I'll cook dinner. And the one thing I will say that we've always done as a family, we've always eaten all together. And I've definitely found having that freedom. So when you finish, so often when I was cleaning, I'd finish at 3 o'clock, do the school pickup at 3:30. And I feel blessed that my school pickup is at 3:30, not 3 o'clock. So I'd do that, and then you'd get home, and then I'd cook dinner, and everybody would want to eat when they're back from school at like 4:30 or 5. And we're lucky that my husband works in the business with us, so we can just all eat together. And that's lovely. And, I think it's really hard because kids do want to eat early at 4:30 or 5. And a lot of
Yeah.
people don't eat until like 7:30 or 8. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I would just eat twice if that was the option. If I was giving my kids and then myself, like I might as well eat with the kids because I'm going to eat it anyway. So we all just started eating all at the same time.
Yeah, and it's nice because obviously because your husband works with you in the business that he gets to enjoy that family time as well. Whereas if he was out doing a 9 to 5, he wouldn't be home till 6:30 and would miss out on that time, wouldn't he? So it's nice that everybody gets to enjoy family time because of your business as well, really, isn't it?
And the kids are now at an age and stage where they understand that we do family time and then we'll have a couple of hours doing whatever and they need to do homework and mummy and daddy are there. But come 8 o'clock or, somewhere between 7 and 8, it's not unusual that we will then choose to go out and either do one of our hobbies or a group or whatever, or work again. I do something every evening between probably like 7:30 and 10, but the kids know I'm there for them between 3:30 and 7:30. But
Yeah.
then after that, yeah, they might have to either be at a club or do whatever is planned for them for that evening, but mummy's possibly not going to be with them.
Yeah, and that's a similar sort of timetable that I worked out really was be there for that family time, but freedom afterwards to do as you choose for them and for you, isn't it?
Yeah, and I do. And I found this really important for this work-life balance. If you are going to get up, do breakfast, do the school run, then you're going to work. I had to nap every day, Diane. Like, did you have to do this?
Like a nap, don't you, Louise?
Did. So if I could, it's straight after getting home from school, I'd have a half an hour to an hour's nap before dinner. And I know the timescales are getting tighter and tighter and tighter, but I can sleep for 20 minutes and you just feel so much better. But I knew I had to keep going till 10:30.
Yeah, power snooze are good. But apparently, if you drink a coffee before you fall asleep, then the coffee kicks in after you've had your snooze even better as well. I don't drink caffeine, so it wouldn't work. Well, it would work for me. It would work too well for me. But yeah, apparently that's the secret to a power snooze of 20 minutes.
So I've only been drinking coffee for the last 8 months of my life, and I did get a bit addicted. And then I was like, well, it stopped working as well. So then I just sort of stopped it.
Yeah.
Now I'm a bit
Yeah,
like,
Mark drinks coffee. Usually only drinks coffee in the mornings, but if we go out for a meal, he will have a double espresso after a meal, and he can still go to sleep. If I had a double espresso, I wouldn't sleep for 3 days because I do drink coffee occasionally, but it's very occasional.
so do you know what put me off recently? I don't know if you remember, Diane, about 3, 4 weeks ago, I was so ill. We couldn't record a podcast because I was like, I can't talk. I'm so ill. It's awful. And I think I'd known it was coming on, so we did one a day early. And I must have overdosed on flu tablet when I definitely did because I couldn't get my temperature down. So I was taking paracetamol and flu tablets. And these flu tablets all had caffeine in, which I think I overdosed on caffeine while I was ill. And I got to the end of it and I was like, I never want to touch a coffee again. It's the most disgusting thing. And I didn't drink coffee during this illness, but I think it was that caffeine in that flu tablets for 4 days solid. Like I definitely overdosed.
Did you get withdrawal though? Don't if you only stop drinking? Because I know it's years since I've drunk caffeine regularly. I just drink fruit teas, but I did it years and years ago, and you get headaches and like caffeine withdrawal, don't you?
So, as I say, I've only drunk it recently, so I haven't been big on it. But I think it was the caffeine during that illness, that 4 days of a lot of tablets. And then for the next day, I couldn't sleep and I was probably a bit jittery. So I probably had overdose and probably got that withdrawal. And that's what put me off. And I was like, never want to touch it. Now I will have one a day. But yeah, I don't know what. Anyway, are we saying that caffeine fuels doing
Is that the
family?
answer? No, we're not. No,
I,
definitely not.
I
But
do.
but apparently it helps with a nap.
Do you think I want to bring up one thing, and the reason why we're really talking about family is what is not explicitly put into words is when you have a job, it's paid work. When you have a family, it's unpaid work, but it's just as physically demanding. You still have to do the cleaning, you still have to do the cooking, you still have to look after the kids, you still have to do the washing. And I think if you run a business with the mental load that comes with the business, and the physical load running a cleaning business, and you've got the mental and physical load of running a family as well that often is unrecognized. I think Diane and I, we talked in the last podcast about how many hours we worked. If you count, like if I look at my life, particularly when the kids were younger, comfortably doing 12 or 13 hours paid or unpaid work, I didn't do anything but work. Life was work. Like,
Yeah.
what do you get to
Work,
do
sleep.
apart from work? Like, it's not like, going to the gym, or doing a dog walk. It's still work. Do I enjoy it? Yes, but I don't have a choice about it. And going to the gym, it wasn't like I got to swan around. It was like 20, 30 minutes, go work out, run it in. And, that's just to stay healthy. Like, it's all just work, isn't it?
Life is just work, Louise. Is that what you're saying?
You're unpaid work when you have as many responsibilities as so many of us have. I don't think I'm working when I probably am working, but it's that responsibility that is with you constantly, isn't it?
And actually, responsibility is an interesting word because I've felt that over the years, not just as a parent, but as a business owner. So both the responsibility and the weight of it sometimes is what we carry around more than anything. So whether that's feeling guilty about not spending time with the kids, feeling guilty about not spending time on the business, the responsibility that you're there to pay everybody's wages and making sure the money's there, making sure the clients get their houses cleaned, making sure your kids have got clean school uniform on a Monday. And I remember the runarounds on a Sunday night trying to, oh no, I've done the washing. So much of it is just that weight of responsibility, isn't it? That holds us down and makes us feel all those negative emotions.
Do you know some of the worst times I've had? So I'll be sitting with the kids doing something. I don't know what I'm doing, but we're having a nice time. And then a customer will call and it's something urgent or it's a complaint or something's going wrong. And then your kids are there, but you've got a customer that maybe is a little bit irate and you're going to go, shh, 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 be quiet, shh.
Yeah.
And this phone call might go on for 15 or 20 minutes, and the kids are getting more and more agitated. And then you get off the phone, but you can't relax because you're still thinking through the problem. And the kids are like, Mummy, do this, Mummy, do that. And it's like pent up in them. And then you feel the guilt of what's just happened in your business, that you've obviously done something wrong. And then the guilt of being a terrible parent. And all you want to say to your child is just shut up and let me deal with this. And maybe if you were quiet for a second, I would be able to play with you in half an hour's time. But could you just let me deal with this? But they're 5 and you can't. And you're a terrible parent and you're a terrible business owner. I say I felt like a terrible parent, and it's just guilt the whole time. And you are trying your best and you think, do you know what? It would have been better for everyone if I just sent them to nursery.
Or just got a job.
Oh, I just got a job. And I mean, that example is just one of many where you just like, I am failing in every aspect. And then the last thing you want to do is be motivated to try and work on your business, to put in a system to stop that happening again, with your kid going, Mummy, spend more time with me. And you're just like, I can't do this. And, I don't know about you, but at this point, I then just go, right, I'll deal with that little problem and move on to playing with my child. And I don't know, then it's dinner time and then you haven't got the energy to do things. And I just failed consistently.
Do you think having some boundaries help? Do you think, look, don't take the call when you're with the kids, use an answering service, turn the voicemail on, whatever it takes, because you could take that half an hour out. We are not an emergency service. So you could take half an hour out with the kids and then go, right, kids, I've just got to return some calls. And, I'm not obviously we've all dealt with stuff in the moment and regretted answering a call when, when we either shouldn't have done or we just wish we hadn't. But, is it about setting some boundaries of when you're actually at work and when you're not?
Yeah, do you know, I don't think you can be successful in business and run a family without boundaries. And there has to be boundaries, there has to be personal boundaries that you say, I'm not going to cross my own boundaries. There has to be boundaries with the kids. So now I'm so lucky that I have a room and the kids know that when I'm in there, do not disturb me for the next hour. I'm going to be on a call or I'm going to do this. Just don't come in. If it's an emergency, obviously you can, but please, it's an emergency. But boundaries with customers, and it's really interesting. I just took a phone call from a lovely DCBM member, and she said, Louise, this customer's treating me really badly. They cancel, it's weekly, and every month they make one cancellation, and I don't know what to do. And I was quite short of time, so I answered it very succinctly. And she goes, well, what would you do? And I was like, I wouldn't be in this situation. I had terms and conditions, and if they cancelled once, they would have been whacked with a cancellation fee, and they would have just dumped me. They would have cancelled me. So no, I wouldn't be in this position because they would have cancelled me. And do you know, you don't, when you have boundaries and you're really clear on them, you don't even realize you have the boundaries that until it's kind of questioned. Like, they would have cancelled me. I wouldn't be in the situation she's now being in. And I think when you're so pushed on time, if you keep saying yes to things and you keep giving, you are by default saying no and letting people down, but it's not conscious. And so what I very much learned, when you are giving so much, you think by not having boundaries, you are failing in other areas and it's unconscious. And that's why I think boundaries are so important, because boundaries are making a conscious choice as to where you're saying no, rather than an unconscious choice of what's going to fall off the back end anyway.
It's a good point, actually, because saying yes when you should say no, or when you actually mean no, lets people down in the long run anyway, doesn't it? Whether that's family or customers or team or yourself. It's, knowing where those boundaries are really helps you maintain that perspective on things. And also it helps you maintain your integrity, doesn't it? Because if you should have said no in the first place, you're then going to let them down at some point. You'd have been better off letting them down up front rather than letting them down later in a roundabout way.
But if you, for example, say yes to a customer when you should have said no, right? And you go and you deliver on it, let's say you don't let them down, but actually that's time when you should have spent with your kids. So by default, you're letting your kids down, so yes, you might be the most reliable cleaner, business owner, whatever, but where's the price really being paid? And so having those boundaries and saying, actually, I only work between 9 and 3, and I will work between 7 and 9. That is it. I'm not going to answer outside of that time, apart from an emergency, right? And really, it has to be an emergency before I'll even pick up the phone. It protects your family time. Whereas if you're going to answer the phone at any time, then the kids know, well, mummy's just going to let me down. Mummy's going to take that phone call. She said she was going to play with me, but, I'm just waiting to be let down.
And the reality is they'll then stop asking.
Yes. And I think you think you're a really good business person because you'll take that call at any time. But, I'd rather make conscious choices on those boundaries. And I said this on a podcast, and this has happened to me recently. A customer wants me to do a quote at the weekend. And I've said, no, it's just going to be a no. And they're like, well, then I won't be able to go with you. And I'm like, no, you can't then, because that's my boundary. And that's not to say I won't do a quote at the weekend, but what they're asking for is just getting more and more tricky. So it's going to be a no. But, my weekends are for whatever I choose them to be for.
And the reality is most cleaning businesses are family businesses, whether it's just you doing it for your family or, like in your case, where both of you are in the business. And, surely that family ethos extends to everything that you do. So your team work 9 till 3, Tuesday to Friday. You should have that, those boundaries as well, shouldn't you? Well, these are our working hours because we're a family business and we value family time. People will buy into that anyway. They will actually like that.
The other thing that I find is, if you've only got a limited time, say, for example, I drop my kids off 9:15 in the morning, so I could not start a job till 9 o'clock, unless you put them in breakfast club and you can start earlier, but that's a choice as well. And that's fine if you choose to do that. But most of the time I tried not to do that. So I could start at 9 o'clock. So if a customer said, right, I've got this job for you and it starts at 10 o'clock, no, because I'd lose an hour's work. It would be a no. And things like, I really, really want to use you. I'm prepared to pay your prices, but I leave the house at 8:30. You've got to come and pick up the keys at 8:30. No, that would be a no. And sometimes I think, especially, and I've had this where come and pick up the keys at 8:30. I know you've got to drop your kids off, so just come pick up the keys and then you can do the job when you pick them up. Well, that's fine, except for sometimes it gets really tricky because you're running late, the kids are screaming, blah, blah, blah. And you try to bend the rules to say, all right, I'll have the kids in the car and I'll come and pick up the keys on the way to school. And at some point it starts to fail. And the point it really starts to fail is when you become a business owner and you've got a team and you've bent the rules to try and accommodate extra little things and you realize that it's totally unscalable. And I definitely found this as my team got bigger. I ended up letting people down in ways I hadn't predicted because I'd bent the rules to say yes to accommodate more people. And the reality is I couldn't scale it.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, that client likes it that way, that client likes it that way, and this client's slightly different. Oh, they like that product, they like this, and it's just like, that is not scalable. You've got to deliver consistently across everybody in your team, haven't you?
I was going to say, can I ask the question? Because you had kids, right? It's hard. And we've talked about paid and unpaid work. And the reality is when they go to school or when they go to nursery, it's easier. But did you get much support outside of that with sort of running a family? Because I think it's really hard, particularly as if you were a single mum, and I'm not a single mum, but there are times when, you are responsible for everything. And sometimes, it's really hard without support. Did you get that support?
Well, when I started a business, Emma was the youngest at 13, so it wasn't quite as much pressure. But I know earlier on when they were younger, because I was a mum relatively young, my parents were still relatively young. So my mum was amazing as my childcare when my kids were growing up. When I was working a full-time job, we lived in the same village as my parents, so my daughter would walk to grandma's after school and be at grandma's. Yeah, having that support and childcare is so important, but also, and I was saying to you earlier, I don't speak to Mark much about the businesses anymore because I don't necessarily need him as a sounding board in the same way. But when I first started the cleaning business, he was probably the only one that understood what I was doing, because so many people were like, "You're starting a cleaning business." Honestly, people were just, "We're going to be a cleaner." And I'm like, "Yes." And people weren't that supportive outside of really Mark, I suppose. Everybody else, they were supportive in their own way, but I think they were also like, "What?" Whereas Mark never ever gave me that. I mean, he probably did secretly think she's crazy. He probably still thinks that.
Yeah,
But
he
he was
definitely does. He's told me.
but he was always supportive and always like, whatever you want to do, I'm here. I'll make sure that, when you are out working late, the tea will be on the table. And yeah, really, we did it as a team, even though I was the one, he had a full-time job. I was the one sort of building the business. So having that support is invaluable. And I think having the support as a parent, never mind as a business owner, is invaluable, because we do it all now. My mum was a stay-at-home mum. She didn't work outside the home. I'm not saying she didn't work really hard, but having a full-time job or business and doing all that is almost impossible without some good backup, isn't it?
We didn't have that. So we had both my husband's family and my family were both very close to, but my family lives down in Suffolk. His is in North Wales. We're in Manchester. I can't go. Can you take my kids while I nip to Tesco's or walk the dog or something? Everything I did all the way through had to be, I did it with kids. And definitely at the start, for the first 3 years, I ran the business with a young baby, and my husband had his own job and he worked from 6 a.m. I think he worked 6 till 2. So he'd leave the house at 5 a.m. and things. It was, although I got a bit more help in the evenings, it was hard, really hard. And I think, I see these people that are single mums, and obviously I wasn't a single mum, but the pressure was on. Like, it's a lot, it's a big balancing act. And it was things like, where you're just broken and tired with young kids. And it's like, please just let me sleep. Please, will someone just play with my kids for half an hour or an hour? Or it just was really hard. I would have killed for that support. And I think for me, like, and we're going to talk about this in a second about working with your partner in the business, I definitely found it in a lot of ways, because he understood what was going on, once we both had the time freedom and flexibility, it made having a family so much easier because, yeah, we were just tired the whole time. The business definitely grew when we had the flexibility to manage things between us.
I think, hate to give Gareth the credit, but, him coming into the business was a game changer for you guys, wasn't it?
Yes. So, okay,
I'm
I'll
not
tell
it. I know that,
you. No, no.
it's a joint enterprise, but I think it's made a big difference.
So what happened, it was really hard in the business. So I had about 10 staff. I got to 10 staff. Well, I'd been there, like, I'd been running it 2.5 years. And my baby was 2 years old at this point, so probably 2.5 years. And it's hard. And I was like, I was used to a corporate job and having all that responsibility. I was like, this is really hard. And I was like, do you know what? I'm beginning to think that it might be easier to go back to my other job. And I was like, going to my husband, I'm not sure I want to do this anymore. This is really hard. And his dream had always been to run his own business. And I was beginning to just go, I'm not sure this is for me. And it's not to say I didn't have the skills to do it. I just didn't have necessarily at the time the passion to do it. And so he came on board and I really wanted to have another baby. So he actually came on board so that I could go off on maternity leave and have another baby. So at the point really where we started trying for a baby, that's when he came on board. Oh my God, did we clash? Because I'd run my own business and he walked in and was like, he started to change a lot of the structures, and some of my staff were quitting because some of the things he was doing. I'd worked with these women day in, day out for years. And I was like, what do I do? I want to support the staff because they're my friends, but at the same time, I can see that what my husband is doing is right. And I was stuck slap bang in the middle and arguing with him, but I couldn't be arguing in front of the staff because I had to be saying, look, I do support some of these decisions, but I could see the impact it was having on them. And it was really hard.
Yeah, but it's been worth it, hasn't it? It's like it's because it sounds, I mean, you built a business that worked around family. You weren't really passionate about it, but it was convenient, it worked. And I suppose together you've been able to build a business that has delivered more. You're still not that passionate about the cleaning business, though, are you, Louise?
I love about my business is that I'm at the stage where there are aspects I love and there's aspects I hate with a passion. And it's not to say I can't do them. I would just rather not. Say things I dislike, just the mundaneness of scheduling. I like, if there's a problem, I like solving it. But what I don't like is the consistent, boring, day in, day out, just running a business day in, day out. And we talked about sort of, there are things that need to happen and I don't get excited by it. And managing staff, I quite like managing it for a short period, but do I like the mundanity of just day in, day out? I quite like back to work interviews. I enjoy those, but I'm very emotional. And so I find it quite hard on a long term. Like if I've got to run it for like 3 weeks, to not get bit hacked off with people doing stupid things. And I'm like, you're really annoying me. And it's not even in the moment, it's just consistent. You are really hacking me off. And I'm like, can we not just sack them? Can we not just do that? And it's like, Louise, tolerate it, tolerate it, tolerate it. And I think, I have a lot of respect for, I would sack certain people, like, and we have a really good team, but it would be a lot smaller if I had my way.
Well, it's quite funny is people listening are thinking, how did she manage to get to 10 staff? But you know what, actually, it's what I love about, seeing what you guys do is the way that you do work together. And actually, I could not work with Mark the way that you work with Gaz, but then you have different roles in the business, don't you?
So what happened was when I came back from having my second baby, obviously life got even harder because we now had two kids and, one had started school, like nursery school, and one obviously was still at home. And I've always loved having a career and I've loved working. And what I'd realized first time round is actually I'm not a good full-time mum. I think I'm a pretty good mum, but I lose a part of myself when I am just with the baby constantly. I don't find it intellectually stimulating enough. And so really when Naomi was how old? Well, when she was about 4 months, I was like, I'll come back for 2 half days. It was nice to go back. But then of course he'd been running my business for over a year at that point because I had had a nice bit of maternity leave. And I wanted to go back in and we were just clashing and clashing and clashing. And the only way we managed to work it out was when we separated the business. And what I can really appreciate now is my skills are so completely opposite to his skills. He hates anything to do with sales, recruitment, high pressure, things going wrong, everything I love. He wants to put in systems, mundanity, doing all of that stuff. And, he probably wouldn't describe it as mundanity. What happens is I come up with these great plans, these great ideas, and I will put them into action. And then he has to consistently deliver them. And that's what's allowed us to grow the number of businesses we have by recognizing and appreciating. And when I come up with a great idea, he's like, stop a second, just stop, because you're going to do what you always do. You can't deliver that consistently. So that's a good idea, and I can see it's a good idea. But what we need to do is before we even start it, we're going to have to work out what the constraints are going to be. And so we often will deliver 60% of my good idea because we know that we could consistently deliver that. And it makes for something really powerful when you can acknowledge, and it's not easy for me to acknowledge, that I'm not going to consistently deliver it. And that's quite hard to admit about yourself, that there's no point doing something if you can't deliver on it, or you could until you got bored. And I think that when you work as a team, and there's times when he will be facing a problem, he's like, he'll have to make a difficult phone call or negotiate or something. And he feels a bit awkward about negotiations. Whereas he now knows the first thing we do is put Louise in to negotiate. I'll go find out the situation. I'll go negotiate. I'll come back to him and go, this is the situation. What do you want? Particularly with the honey business. We get a lot of businesses that want to partner with us, that want to negotiate with us. There's a lot of offers. But he doesn't want the awkwardness of having to do that. So I'll come put it on the table for him. What do you want to do with this? Because it's, you're the beekeeper. This is your business. You've got to deliver this. And then it's me that goes in and does the final negotiation once we've got it. And it's a really easy negotiation, but he can't cope with the pressure and stress necessarily of doing that.
I suppose this is what's important in any business partnership, and probably in a marriage as well, but in business partnership, whether it's your significant other or whether it's a friend that you're working with, is knowing where your strengths and weaknesses are and acknowledging them and not trying to constantly bulldoze each other. It doesn't seem like you guys do that. Whereas when Mark and I do anything together, Mark's the one that I'm a bit of a control freak, but I'm also the one that just wants to get it done. Whereas he's like, yeah, but we can't do that because before we can do that, we've got to do these 10 other things. And I'm just like, but I want to do this thing. And it's frustrating, but we've never had to do that in a work environment. It's only ever been stuff at home.
I'll tell you what I find quite challenging, that blurring between a work environment and a home environment. So in a work environment, when it's just me and him, I have to acknowledge what I'm not good at and my faults and things like that. And I'm quite open to acknowledging those, and I'm all right with that. In a work environment, he will not point out my faults in front of the staff, right? He may occasionally roll his eyes when I do something, but it will never be pointed out. But yet in a social environment, I'm like, well, no, you cannot point out my faults in a social environment either. Whereas he can do it in quite a jokey way. And I'm going, you're still pointing out my fault, that if you didn't work with me full time, you would never know. Or when I've done something a little bit wrong at work and it's gone a little bit wrong, but I've maybe recovered from it and saved that situation, and he'll joke about it down the pub with my friends, and I'm like, on a second, that's not okay. I find that quite really frustrating. Or he'll tell a story. Like, I'll tell you what happened yesterday. So if you're into gaming, my family are into gaming, and they bought a new graphics card. I can't tell you anything about the graphics card, but they bought a new graphics card. It arrived at work. I was at work. I phoned up and I said, the graphics card's arrived. He said, brilliant. This was 10 in the morning. And that was the end of the conversation. I didn't bring it home. So then when my son arrives and he says, brilliant, I've got great news, the graphics card's arrived. And my son's like, brilliant, can we put it in the computer? And my husband was like, Mummy left it at work. If you didn't work together, this would never be an issue, would it? And I'm like, why do you have to make it about me? It's things like that. And they're definitely at the beginning, the power dynamics. Who's in charge? Who makes the decisions? I would say that working with your partner is very freeing and brilliant, and you've got someone on your side that you can trust no matter what. So for example, my husband took a massive honey order, and so last night I was up till 12:30 and I got up again at 6:30 because he was busy doing other things and this had to be delivered by 12 o'clock today. And I've just delayed these podcasts a bit as well. And I will pull all the stops out, despite it not being my order or having anything to do with me. I delivered 4 hours work on that, despite having a packed schedule. You can 100% rely on your partner to do that. Whereas I don't think you could rely on a member of staff to go, are you going to work till 12:30 and then get up at 6:30 to keep going on it?
No.
Partners would do that. But then at the same time, they're going to ask you to do things like the very fact he asked me to do that. How many people would say yes to that? Your partner is going to push those boundaries. And there's a point where sometimes you have to put the boundaries in place. And sometimes you have to say, I do not take another order. I will deliver it, but don't you dare. And if you do, I'm going to drop you in it. Or, so you can trust completely. But I think both of you have to be really clear on boundaries and communication. And communication's hard, particularly with in business where you're making a lot of decisions. There are things that you have to let go. There are things you have to bring up later. And there are things where you go, no, I'm going to argue this out here and now because I am absolutely not having it. And what's right? Do you have that confrontation then? Do you have it later or do you not have it at all? And you've really got to know yourself to be able to decide on those.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting that you're like, I don't want to do that. I'm going to put my foot down, or I'm going to let things go. And I find this in one of the things that I've had to do in the cleaning business is not everybody will do it exactly how I would do it, but I have to accept that it's 90% there, or even 80% there, to be honest, and just accept that that's okay. Otherwise, you will drive yourself crazy trying to micromanage everything. So, one of the things that working around your family though is you guys are setting an example for your kids in terms of good or bad, but you are setting an example though of what's possible, aren't you? And that you can build something and actually you're a little bit outside the norm in terms of you guys aren't building a corporate career anymore. You guys are building multiple businesses, but actually that's quite inspiring. No matter what your kids end up doing, they've got that work ethic example from you, haven't they?
This is a really hard question, isn't it? Is it right or wrong? Do you know what I find hard? Education, and I'm not going to go into my opinions on our education system, but it was created to create a workforce that was going to go out and work in factories, mills, or whatever they worked in. And I think that it doesn't necessarily equip children with the skills to even work in a normal workforce nowadays. And I think that some of the skills that are most important, particularly with the rise of AI, I think we're going to see more interpersonal skills are going to be more and more important. And so I very much think that kids need to learn resilience. They need to learn about money. They need to learn a lot more skills that aren't necessarily taught in school. And so one of the things that we try and do is be quite open talking about customer or a business decision or an account or decisions that we might make about investments or with our money. I won't obviously ask the kid's opinion on it because I don't need it. But I will explain it. And for example, if something comes on the news, I will talk about politics or economics. And the kids will come. Like last night, I went out with my daughter and we will nip into the office and I've just got to do 10 minutes and she will be involved and you will do this and we'll talk about staff and we will talk about, maybe not name them, but talk about the situations. And if you make some of these decisions, this is what's going to happen. And so I do think our kids and a lot of business owners' kids have a much greater depth of understanding of if you decide to go into the workplace, you are going to be able to, you're going to have to understand from a management perspective because you've been exposed to it for so long. And I think you're definitely, even if you choose to go into the corporate environment, I think you'll definitely see business owners' kids will go up the ranks higher because of that depth of understanding that a lot of other kids would not be exposed to.
I agree. They're going to be confident. They're going to be more independent. They're going to see all different facets. Whereas, children of parents that work a 9 to 5, come home, forget about work, They have no concept of even the work, never mind how business works and why inflation matters and why employees' national insurance matters and why all these things are important and they feed into the economy. You know, even the stuff that's going on at the moment about tariffs, the knock-on effects of that and the markets and everything. Children of business owners, no matter what the business is, whether it's a cleaning business or whether it's a multi-million pound, other kind of business, it's all interlinked, isn't it? And yeah, I think you're right. I think that our kids get to see that to a different level than anybody else's kids, because you're right, it is not taught in schools. Some schools are better at it than others. I know Emma did business studies at A level and she wouldn't let me do it. It was quite interesting. Despite our good relationship, she was like, you are not coming into school. The teacher wanted me to come in and do a talk to the kids about business and about starting a business. I wasn't allowed to do it, but that was obviously a bit more forward thinking, that gets small business owners into schools to actually talk to them about being an entrepreneur and doing something slightly different from the usual sort of careers advice that they get to go and do a particular job.
It's interesting you say confidence. And I know, so my dad owned his own business in a completely different sector. So definitely when I started my own business, I didn't have a lot of the fears and worries that a lot of people that are thinking of starting their own cleaning company phone me with now. And I didn't have those concerns. I didn't consider, why would I start a business considering whether I failed? Why would I start it considering what people think of me? Because
you were the child of a business owner.
Because they're coming up with, that was my life anyway. So it was just so normal and natural. So failure, it's not to say it wasn't an option, but why would I consider it? Yeah, I might fail, but I'm not going to dwell on it. I'm excited about what I'm doing. And I get
but that's what your kids are going to get, and what our kids get from having parents as business owners is they do understand that not everything goes right every single day, but also it's down to you to fix it. It's down to you to resolve the problem, and it's also down to you when it works. So they kind of get that real positive sort of reinforcement of that they can do it, for good or bad. It's all down to them. They're responsible, and that confidence, I think, comes from, I mean, yes, it can beat you down. It can kind of make people feel unconfident at times, but ultimately we are giving them some amazing skills that they don't get at school, and that they wouldn't get if they just went to school and then went into a job and never experienced this crazy world of being a business owner.
But I think there's two things that I just want to bring up. So the first one is when the children go, as all children do, mummy or daddy, how much do you earn? And the thing that bugs me most of all as well is mummy, daddy paid for that. Did he? Did he now? Right? Or daddy earns more money than you, does he? Really? First of all, he works in my business, but don't worry about that. But it's really hard. And as they've got older, mummy, how much do you earn is a really hard one for a business owner to answer, because one, it will fluctuate. Two, what do you really earn? Is it turnover? Is it profit? And actually, is it what you choose to take out the business? Or is it, and it's trying to explain to kids, you can't directly compare what I earn to what an employed person earns. I think I forgot what my other point was going to be, but it's children compare an awful lot and they want to compare parents. But the other point I was going to make is we live in a very affluent area, and they have a lot of my kids' friends have a lot of holidays and have a lot of big houses and have wonderful cars. And my kids would sometimes go, well, mummy, why don't we have X, Y, or Z that so-and-so has? And I'm like, yeah, but your friend goes to breakfast club. Your friend goes to after school club. Your friend hasn't seen her dad all week. Your friend might go on these wonderful holidays because that's the only time they spend with their parents. If you want all of those things, we could go and do that. But do you understand that what you would have to lose for your parents to go and do that? And really from quite an early age, it was like, do you want mummy to be there at every school drop off? Do you want mummy to be there every school pickup? Do you want, that they all have nannies as well? They're being picked up after school club by their nanny, right? Because mummy and daddy have got high powered jobs where they're going to London and not getting home till 7. And it's getting the kids involved in the decision-making process from an early age, understanding it doesn't have to be like this. If you really want those things, then fair enough, but mummy and daddy will make those choices. We're making these for you, and we will make a different one if you don't believe this is the right one. And I think
Interesting. Do they take that on board?
definitely my son was just so weird and he doesn't really care. But my daughter really thought about it and was like, actually, no, I do want you to do what you're doing now. I want this. I don't want what they've got. And what it stopped was that real element of envy. And my daughter is going through a stage where they want, what's the latest perfume? I don't know. They want the latest perfume. They want the expensive makeup. They want this. They want that. And to an extent, we are very lucky my children can have some of them, but not to the extent. They've got a friend. I'm going to talk about my daughter's friend. Mummy and daddy are both very, very high powered lawyers, and they don't see their kids as much as obviously we do. But every time they do spend time with the kids, they'll get a gift. Anything their child wants is just ordered off Amazon. There is no money issues. Whereas I say to my daughter, no, you can't have it. You get given your pocket money. You can save up. You want that £20 blusher, you can have it, but you are going to have to wait for it, or you wait till your birthday, or you wait for this. Whereas they'll say, I want it. Oh, we'll go there and we'll go and get you that and 5 other things. And I think what my daughter sees really from an early age when we were talking about spending more time is, it's that comparison. And so she understands probably more than her friends do the decisions that got them to that point. They just see the things, whereas my daughter understands the steps to get those things, both in terms of money, how much we had to work, and actually what we're sacrificing to get that.
Yeah, because those kids are not seeing the parents out at work all day and their commute to London or wherever.
There's
They're
no
not seeing any of
decision.
that. Whereas a business, there's nowhere to hide, is there? They see everything. They know how hard you work and they know what's involved.
Kids aren't involved in the decision. Mummy and daddy are lawyers. There is no other way. You don't turn to your kids and go, should I give up my job? That's just not an option. Whereas we have enough flexibility. Do you want mummy to work 2 hours a day extra every single day, but you go to after school club? That is a direct question for them.
Or do you save up and buy your own blusher?
Yeah, and who spends? My daughter's makeup at the age of 11 is more expensive than all of mine. It's ridiculous. But anyway, that's another point.
That's a good way, though, to set an example, isn't it? I mean, we always sort of say, be careful your kids are watching, but actually it's good that they get to watch for good or bad sometimes. Sometimes it's good for them to see the struggle of a small business and understand our role in how everything else works, isn't it?
Do you know the other thing? I will, if something is going a bit wrong, I'm quite openly will argue because my arguments, we're not aggressive or anything like that. I'm not worried about having an argument. I don't think an argument has any detrimental impact on my kids because I think me and my husband are actually quite
debate. That's what we should call it.
Yeah, sometimes my voice may raise. Rarely do we have a slammed door. I think a healthy debate, maybe I might shout and walk out because I can walk out and come back in 15 minutes later and discuss it again because I know we've got that ability to argue and I'm not worried about it. I will happily argue in front of my kids. And I hope that, exposing and a business argument, I think exposing you to your kids, if you know you can do it relatively healthily, I do think that's a good thing. I think, like arguments, obviously there's a time where you shouldn't have that argument in front of your kids. But to a certain extent, it teaches them amazing communication skills and they understand the point. And they will decide which side they agree with as well. They regularly now get involved. And I'm like, really? Don't you see that what you're saying? Don't agree with daddy. Actually, my point is this, this, and this. And we do get them involved.
It teaches them debating skills. It teaches them that actually home is a safe place to air concerns or grievances, if you like. And yeah, I think it's good for them to have. But how do you spend time off, you and Gaz, when you work together in more than one business and the kids? You talk about couples that go out for a meal and all they can talk about is the kids. How do you guys navigate that? Or does it not matter because it's all so intertwined, it's just life?
So obviously we have the bees, we work together in the cleaning business, we have kids, we do have separate hobbies. That's the only thing we do separately. I think it's interesting, we don't tend to work together during the day anymore. So we will often phone each other 4 or 5 times because there's different issues to deal with, but we don't really work together day to day. Quite often only one of us will be in the office. And so, but because we talk about things so constantly, when we do go out for a date or go out for a meal or whatever you want to call it, first of all, our dates, we're quite active people, so we like to go and do things rather than sit and have some deeper, meaningful chat. But let's say we go for a meal and we are talking. It will be about business or the kids or the bees or whatever's gone on in our lives. But because we know so much about, because we are fundamentally working alongside each other all day, we don't tell a story about what's happened because we already know the stories. We already know the key things that's happened. So what's really nice about going out for a meal or something is having the time to actually analyze what's happened, and you get that greater depth on it that we don't always have the time to pick apart and say, or you can give feedback because we're so busy dealing with issue. You can go and say, oh, by the way, that thing that happened the other day, actually you did really well there. And did you know I took that and applied it here in this case? And so it's not just talking about the kids, like you pick them up, you drop them off, we'll talk about the kids, for example, and say, actually, let's review how we're doing as parents. Should we tweak this, this, and this? So do we talk about all these things? Yes, but what it does give us the time to do is have a greater depth on those discussions. And where we have separate hobbies, I don't talk to him about it because he doesn't know anything about it. Why would I talk about the things he doesn't know? I'd rather analyze the things we do know. Like, I don't need him involved in what I do outside of that. If I'm going for a run or a climb, or if I play bridge or whatever I do, I might tell him the score, but does he need to know a play-by-play account of each hand that he didn't understand anyway? No.
So actually, in reality, it probably gives you more to talk about than maybe a couple where one's running a cleaning business, one or the other one goes out full-time working, and then if they do tell each other about it, it's not in the same way. It's more them, like you say, informing or telling stories about their work rather than sharing the experience.
So I don't know what it's like being a couple where you live completely different lives and then you go out for a date and you hardly know each other. Because our lives are so intertwined, I almost find it so difficult to imagine that.
We've all been out for a meal and looked across and seen a couple that haven't spoken for an hour. Mark and I always like, can we never be that one?
I think if we didn't speak for an hour, it's because of an underlying issue where I'm annoyed. Generally, it'll be
you're literally not speaking.
Yeah, I don't think it would be because of no common ground. So yeah, we don't talk about the kids that much. We talk about, I don't know. I think because your lives are so intertwined, it's like having a best friend, someone you can rely on, someone you hate. It's like having another version of you, but a different version of you. And I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I think we all just bumble through. And what I will say to anyone that is working through with their partner and having a hard time, like I'm sat here saying, well, it's lovely. And we're intertwined and we get this time freedom and it's wonderful. And you can totally rely on each other. I went through 2 years of hell, and I would say that I literally reached the point where I was like, either I divorce him or I leave the business, and I left the business because I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep living my life fighting this fight. I can't do it. And so it was either I quit or I divorced him, and I actually chose to stay with him and left the business and then came back again in a different capacity. But if you're going through a hard time, I don't know what to say because it is so hard when it's hard.
Yeah. And what about with the kids and everything? What's your top tip?
Or balancing business with the kids, balancing husband with the kids. What's the question? Having kids.
Yeah, don't have kids. Is that the tip? No, with the kids, because we've talked a lot about you and Gaz, but what about the kids? What's your if you were giving some advice now to a cleaning business owner that comes to you and just goes, I have no time for them. I have no time for the business. I feel like I'm failing both.
God, I felt like I failed nearly all the way through. The only time I don't feel like I'm failing sometimes is when I look at other people and I go, bloody hell, I'm doing really well. I guess the only time I'm not failing is when other people are doing worse. I guess the other thing is I decided to let go of all the guilt as well. So I don't feel like I'm failing most of the time because I've decided not to feel like that. I only feel like I'm failing when I think about it.
Isn't that the secret to parenting though? Let go of the guilt and just do your best, because that's all any of us can do.
Yeah, I would say you've been working with me when I went through NLP, and one of the nice things about going through NLP is a big subject actually, but going through, say, timeline therapy or something, and you choose to let go of the guilt, and getting rid of the guilt in your life allows you to be more present with the kids, allows you, if you're not wasting your time and energy feeling guilty, and the reality is we all do, and feeling like a failure, if you don't waste your time and energy on that and just kind of bumble through life and enjoy it, enjoy the moments, have a positive outlook, then I guess everything becomes fun. And my answer would be, there is no right answer. It's going to feel terrible if you let it, or you can choose to just be positive and get on with it. It's going to be hard either way. That's really my answer.
That's good advice for life and business, really, isn't it? It's going to be hard at times. Just keep plodding on, you'll be fine.
It's do the basics, make sure your kids are fed. The one thing I would say, the one epiphany I had, especially when the kids were young, to be a good parent doesn't mean that I have to do it all. And being in business, I think all of us are a little bit control freaks. We want it done our way. And I definitely found especially when they were young, I don't even think I thought I was a good mum. I wanted it done my way. I wanted it done what I believed was the right way. And learning to let go, and learning that if someone else looked after my child, maybe slightly differently to me, actually that was a good thing. And I think I see a lot of women in business, because we tend to be a little bit control freaks. Just because your partner is not as good a parent as you, doesn't feed them the healthy meal that you would chooses to watch telly while they're running around being a little bit ignored, which is what my partner will do. Actually, the kids learn to entertain themselves. They learn to cook for themselves. They learn to fend for themselves. And while I might totally disagree with some of these things, learning to let go and accept that people do it differently and do it, in your opinion, wrong, actually brings a whole set of developmental skills to your kids that you would never provide. And for those of us that are helicopter parents, that are always there waiting to wipe their nose and waiting to do it and have everything in your bag, and you've got the wet wipes and you've got everything, other people that do it differently bring an awful lot to your kids. And I guess let it go, accept that even if you don't agree with it, accept that it does bring a lot of positives. And if you allow them to do that, that gives you the freedom to either work more or, have a bit of space that is so important to running the business. So accept support, even if you don't think they're great.
Yeah. And ask for help.
Yeah, I've never been great at that. Ask for help, admit when things are falling down. And I think if you spin as many plates as pretty much every business owner does, when you drop them, when you drop the ball, when it goes wrong and it's your fault, just own it. Just go, well, that was inevitable, wasn't it? Either have less plates or accept that, you mess up a lot of the time.
Good note to end on, I think.
That's not good advice, isn't it? Just fail consistently, it's fine. And somewhere along the time, do you know what? This is the worst business coaching advice, isn't it, on the podcast? Just fail and be okay with it.
You'll be all right in the long run. Yeah.
Yeah, just keep trying your best. Plan, the one thing I would say is always be open to reviewing yourself. And when it's going horribly wrong, look at it, look at what you can do, what you're doing to cause the problem. Always, as you would in business, self-analysis. And while you shouldn't dwell on it, you should look at it and be able to take a step out of the situation, look at the bigger picture. And it's only that ability to analyze. So I'll give you an example of this. So I was cooking every dinner and it was just getting too much when you've done it for years on end. And I felt like a terrible mum because I was resorting to spag bol, macaroni and cheese. I probably rotated around about 6 meals, and of which one of them was pizza. And it wasn't the kind of mum I wanted to be. So if I took a step back, when I wasn't stuck in the continual monotony of it, just trying to get food on the table every day, I took a step back and I was like, this isn't what I want to do. This is not what I want to do. One, it's killing me. I'm knackered at this point and I want some help. And my husband would only cook if all the right ingredients for the recipe were there. And I didn't have the mental capacity to shop and plan. And I was like, I will need you to do this, but I am not going to meet the boundaries and parameters that you are putting in place. So something's got to give here. So I decided to get Gusto because then, one, he would cook. Two, the kids were having healthy meals because I could just, so it's a food delivery service, if you don't know, just came in a box and that solved all my problems. And then I realized, well, this is quite expensive getting all my meals delivered. And actually, by this point, I had 300 and my kids are a little bit older now. So I will now go, right, here's a pile. I'll only give them 50. pick 4 meals. I'll go and buy the ingredients for those 4 meals, and now my husband will cook it. And I have a nice balance. But it was only that ability to step back, accept that I felt like I was failing, and then go, what's the solution? We tried the first solution, it didn't quite work for us. So then it's the second solution.
I suppose that's what, relating it back to business, that's what we do at the DCBN a lot of the time, isn't it? Somebody comes to us on a Monday call, because our members get a call on a Monday if they book it. They come to us on a Monday call, they've got a problem, but because we're completely outside of the problem, we can usually very quickly go, this is probably what's going on. And they go, my God, how did you know that? And it's like, just because we're not in the thick of it. Whereas when you're in the thick of it, it's quite hard to see what's going on. Taking that step back and almost looking above yourself at what's going on is really healthy.
I'll tell you, so again, I get calls like this all the time. I'm like, you already know the answers. But going back, it seems obvious when I tell the story about the food. Just go to Gusto or food delivery service. The guilt I felt that I was failing as a mum if I wasn't capable of doing my own cooking, the guilt that this was going to triple my food bill, which was already quite expensive. I couldn't make that mental decision to swap to that. Although I knew that was the answer, I tried to just go through recipe books, and I didn't have the time or the capacity, and I was trying everything to succeed as a mum. And I didn't want to go for that answer because that would have meant that I accepted failure. And so when I tell the story, it seems obvious. That's the obvious answer. That's the solution for you,
And
Louise.
it's just baggage. It's just pressure that we're putting on
Real
ourselves
baggage.
to be super mum. And actually, there's so many resources out there that can help. And it was only a short-term fix for you, because actually now long-term, there's a new dynamic in the way that food is sorted in the house, and it's no longer pressure on you. Yeah, great.
Diane, when you say short term, you don't get 300 recipe cards.
No, yeah, I must admit, when you said 300, I was like, 300?
That was 3 years probably where yeah, it cost me quite a bit. But do you know what the irony was? When I explained this, so this is when you sit down for a meal, and I sat down, I said to my husband, I am failing here. I can't do this. I'm resenting you for not stepping up and helping me, all of this. And then you can talk about it and say, look, this is the option. This is what I'd like to do. Of course, he agreed in a heartbeat, because when your wife is failing miserably and can't cope and the solution is there, it's so easy. And I think we do this in the business. We don't take that next step for some kind of emotional baggage. And, that's why, exactly as you said, you go to a separate person and we're like, well, look, if you don't take that step, you either continue as you are, or I can see you heading down a very bad path here that's going to kill your business. Exactly the same. You wouldn't say to me, Louise, just keep slogging it out. You just need to keep working. Well, that's the solution.
Just there's nothing wrong with spag bowl.
Why aren't you just cooking spag bowl every day? Like that's not the solution, is it? But short term, if you've got no money, maybe cooking spag bol is the answer every day. And you do need to look at it in the context. Or I tried batch cooking, I tried everything. And sometimes we look at businesses, and the solution to mine could have been batch cooking. For some people, it is batch cooking. For me, it wasn't. And when you talk to us on those Monday calls, we'll often run through 2 or 3 different solutions. And I generally find people will pick the one that they'd already come up with themselves. And I'm like, look, I've given you all the options. You've already picked that one. Do you know how to enact it? And we'll talk through how to enact it and how it's going to be put in place for them. And then I'm like, so give me a call in a week and tell me how it's gone, because it's going to happen quite quickly, this, isn't it?
It's almost like we give them permission sometimes. We're not giving them permission, but it's sort of like, okay, yeah, Diane says it's okay, Louise says it's okay. I'm going to do what I was thinking of doing anyway, but didn't have the confidence on my own. So
yeah. Or they think about, well, what if it goes wrong? So if you go back to my food delivery, what if it goes wrong? What if people don't eat it? What if it's too complicated, you don't know how to cook it? What if it turns up and it's not the right food, or it's rotten? Yeah, what if? All of them could go wrong. They could.
What if it goes right?
But you know what? Is it going to go any more wrong? So the big question here that you always get is, I can't put my prices up because what if this happened? Well, do you know what? What if one of them did happen? You'll deal with that exactly the same as we're dealing it now. But if you don't, that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much, Louise. That was a good chat.
Thank you. And good luck to everyone out there for whatever you guys are going through. If you're working with partners and family, and going back to it, just get used to failure.